An Art Journal Tutorial by Creative Katie, Karen Burchill. This page is called Reach for the Stars and is done in my altered book that I bought at the thrift store. I was just playing with my Delusions paints, seeing what happens on these pages. And I discovered that I could put the Delusion paint on the pages just with the blending tool without gesso. And that's what I did on this page. But I got to this point in the process and I didn't know what to do. So I went back to one where I was playing with the Delusions paints on a gesso page. What you see here are layers and layers of stencils and stamps on top of a background that was created with the blending tool on a gessoed surface. As Diane recommended, I use 3 colors. I use cut grass, London blue, and Calypso teal, which is one of the new colors released this year. I used the blending tool and went over the background, blending the colors until I liked what I had. Then I got out a variety of stencils and stenciled, again using the blending tool. I love using the blending tool in there, but there's a bit of a learning curve. How much paint, just go round circles so you don't catch the stencil. Then I applied the paint with the blending tool onto my script stamp and I pressed over the background. That's when I stopped on this page. I decided to use my brand new stencil that I got at the dollar store, a whole $1.50. So it's a little big for the page, but I'm going to adjust it. Using my Black Delusions paint and the blending tool, I'm going to stencil on. Now if the stencil moves, it does make a mess. But if you act quickly, you can get it off the Delusions paint. I found because this is $1.50 for the stencil, I need to really hold it down in place and add a few more pieces of tape to holding the stencil down. And constantly check to see if I'm getting a neat stencil pattern. I also realized that putting several lighter layers works well for the process. I'm just getting used to using the Delusions paint and applying with the blending tool, so there's a bit of a learning curve. Drawing it in between if I'm going to layer them on. And I'm just kind of tweaking the stencil a little bit so I don't end up with one of the letters right in the middle of the double spread. And taping it down, using my fingers to hold the stencil in place and going slowly. As always, the black with the bright colors really pops. So I'm blocking off, using the masking tape, the painter's tape, to block off parts of the stencil that I don't want to use. And that's a good technique to do with any of your stencils. Use pieces that you want for your pages. There's nothing saying you have to use the stencil as it is given. So I left a lot of this in, so you see all the adjustments that I'm making. Again, I'm trying to figure out the placement. I want this right near the bottom of the page, equidistant to where I have the word at the top. I want to make sure that I avoid getting some of the letters right smack in the middle of the spread, and just going slowly. I am going in a kind of a circular motion, very lightly, and you can touch it up. But I plan to outline this later, so I'm not too worried about having a perfect edge. So removing some of the tape, moving it into other places. Just a word of caution, make sure you take off the masking tape. Otherwise, it may stick and wreck your stencil. Realize that I didn't mask off part of the stencil that I needed to. So a quick wipe with the baby wipe and away we go. So again, reapplying painter's tape and stenciling the smaller letters with the little stars. So I'm looking at the swirl, am I going to do it? And I like this little star collection. And I'm debating whether to do it in black, do it in white, or do it with molding paste. And I do it with the My Light Molding Paste by Liquitex. I'm just applying it with the palette knife, fixing up one. And I'm going to have a matching one in the other corner. So here you can see I can use these stars and this, and the swirls on other pages without the words, which is why I bought the stencil, because I can't see myself using the saying, reach for the stars, a lot. So I'm just adding this one little star in a few other places. Erasing one of the globs, making sure it's dry before I put it back. And I apologize that I'm off camera or off screen for some of this. I had zoomed in so you could get a close look. So I'm looking at this now and thinking, okay, I could call this done. So I'm going to edge the pages. And I'm just using the Leftover Delusions black paint on the blending tool. And just rubbing to get kind of that smudgy outline shading. I get my Uniball Signo white pen, which is not permanent, which if you make a mistake you can erase. That's the good part of it. Now you'll notice that I turn the book a lot, and I go whichever way is easiest for me. Sometimes I come towards myself, sometimes I go away from myself. Figure out what works best for you, what's going to give you the straightest line, the best look. And I do discover that the less I touch it up, the better it is. Quite often when I try to touch it up and improve something, I end up making a mess. And you can see I'm turning the book constantly to avoid putting my hand in wet white pen. I'm just going to, since I cleaned that area off and it's not quite dry, I'm moving to another area so I don't wreck my pen. I find that if the area isn't completely dry, or even if it's hot from drying using a heat tool, that it does, the pens don't like that. The one thing that I do like about when applying the background with the Dylusions paints is you use the blending tool. There's no brushes to clean. There's no, um, you almost don't need water. It's so quick and easy. Um, Now I had gotten some of the black on some of the stars, and I really wanted it to be an opaque white, not transparent. Some places weren't as thick as others, so I went with my Posca pen and just whitened it up. Now the texture paste is rough, so I didn't want to use my Uniball Signo on that, and I was careful not to press too hard and roughen it too much up because it was a little rough on the nib. Excuse me. So I want to do some splatters, and I'm tempted to do gold, but not really thinking the gold is going to go good with the colors that are there. So I grabbed my pearlized paints from Martha Stewart, and I have kind of a teal one and a green one that match the two main colors that are there. So I go with one, thin it, and with the fan brush, splatter. All over the page and all over me. And I'm using the other paint and I'm splattering, so you can tell that there are two different colors. And doing a quick dry before I move it. So there you can see all the splatters, the little bit of shimmer, and there's the finished page and some close-ups. Thank you so much for joining me again for this art journal tutorial. Please check out the rest of the videos in my playlist. I think I'm up to 100 videos now. Take the time to subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Check the option to get notified. Bye.